guys, we're out on a mobile call today looking at a 2008 F-150 5.4 liter 3-valve, of course, and he has one heck of a rough idle. He changed VCT solenoids and spark plugs and coils and all that to correct the rough idle that stops from the VCT sticking. That part's gone, but it's just shaking and way too rough of an idle. So we're gonna go to scan tool here and we're gonna check it out, and then we're gonna do a visual on the engine and see if anything got knocked off or is misplaced or disconnected. Let's get to it. All right, let's look at some scan tool data. I had the vehicle identified. You can see it's a nice low mileage vehicle. There's a couple bees around here, so if I scream like a girl, that's why. But let's go in before you even pull any codes, and let's I didn't even start the vehicle yet. Let's pull some mode 6 data. Where the heck is it at? What am I looking at here? Right here. And we'll be able to tell a lot what happened in the past when this was occurring with the customer. As far as the misfires goes, because it'll log all that data for us. So right now it's not looking too good at all. We have 0 counts, 0 counts, 0 counts, unless he recently reset the cam. It's always a good check because you may erase it later on accidentally, and this gives you a nice history of the vehicle and what's happening in the past. So I think he reset it recently, and we just have no data. Let's get out of here, and let's pull some codes. I don't think there's a check engine light, but it's always good. Maybe there's something in there in history. And maybe there's something disconnected right now. So a key on, engine off test like this will check everything electrically right now, and of course pull any continuous memory DTCs. So let's see. And then we can start to check power balance and all that good stuff and see if it really is rough or it's just another concern. Okay, so P1000, like I said before, the mode 6 data, he recently cleared the memory on here. This is pretty recent. So it has no mode 6 data stored yet. So let's go to data logger, and let's, since the vehicle's been sitting here all freaking night, it's a good idea to go in there if you have a hard start concern or a rough idle concern. It's not necessarily throwing misfires or anything like that. And just get in here and look at the data raw, key on, engine off, after a cold soak. And we can see if any of the sensors are skewed. So of course I want a barrel reading, a barrel frequency reading, just for the heck of it. But you also want to go in and bring up, well, flex fuel learned and inferred. That'd be nice in a flex fuel vehicle. That can give us a lot of information. And you also want your temp sensors. So your coolant temp, we're going to get the mass airflow sensor voltage, key on, engine off, cold, and I also want to get an outside temp on here. We can kind of compare them. Also, before you ever start the vehicle and wake up the O2 sensors, you want to look at them. So we're going to check them out too. This vehicle's been sitting, oh, I'd say overnight. Yeah. See, our CHT is 68, good to go. See, might have a problem right here. Okay, so this one is reading something not necessarily right. So that's something to be aware of. The mass airflow sensor is a big skew. It should be 0.00. 0.01, I'm not going to freak out. It's not going to cause a major issue. Intake air temp, I could see it being 84. Out here, but it's really not. Let's see. We have an outside temp sensor here. Outside, outside, outside. No outside option on the HVAC system. So that seems high. The intake air temp seems a bit high. This right here, the barrel is off because he reset the cam. That's fine. 68 for the CHT. I could see that was 68 or so outside. Flex fuel inferred. Unless he's put an actual flex fuel, ethanol in here, it should not be this high. But it's also not learned yet. But still, what it's learning so far is not okay. But once you start the vehicle, we can watch that, make sure it comes back down to a reasonable level until it learns. So we have that. This guy, he's a little wavy and weird there. See that? The O2 sensor. He shouldn't be reading anything. It has a cold soak. 0, 0, 0. So we need to keep an eye on this guy too. So we got a lot of data already right here before we ever start the vehicle. Now, let's go ahead and start it up. Oh, it's got a weak battery or something. Yep. I lost connection with my VCM because the battery is so freaking weak. Yeah, so look at this right here. R02 on 21 is good. Now it's responding. And we're starting to switch, okay? We're starting as they heat up a little bit. In our rear O2 sensors, 22 and 12, they're dead until it heats up. This thing has a dead miss. I can feel it already. So it might be more simple than we had imagined here. Since our flex fuel inferred stayed the same, what's currently detecting, let's go ahead and look at our short-term and long-term fuel trims. I can never find these things. Shorts and the longs. Okay, it has a dead miss or something. Something's sticking here. Oh, I'm dying here. Help, guys, help. So look at this right here. Our barrel is not going to learn that till I drive it. Our flex fuel inferred, it's at 85%. Of course, it's still learning because he did a cam reset. So of course, it's not fully learned yet, but that's high. Okay. CHT looks good. Intake air temp, now we have air flowing through it, looks good. Okay. So it's 68. Yes, that looks good. Ignore that. Our MAF was good earlier. And our O2 sensor. So 11 and 21 should be switching. They're not. 21's trying to switch. 11's starting to switch here. You see them? Let's see what our fuel trims went up to. So on bank 1, we have a major problem. We're at 60, 40, 50% positive, correcting for a lean condition. Bank 2 is not even of an issue here. So bank 2, we gotta let the rear O2 sensor stabilize here. You can see these O2 sensors on 11. See, 11's not even switching. It's just staying rich. Okay, so because it's staying rich is why we're getting our flex fuel issue here. So it's trying to switch. It's at 20 something. Ba, 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 ba. Let's go into our power balance and see if we have an issue with misfires in that bank. So you have a number 4 misfire, which is the last cylinder on bank 1. So before you ever go in here and go, oh dear Lord, what is going on with all these different banks and these O2 sensors that are not reading right, look at this. Believe me, side to side, they do affect each other. So you want to correct any engine drivability concerns before you just start jamming O2 sensors on there. This is a very specific misfire on cylinder 4. It's got to wake up here. You want to correct that first because right now it's sending unburnt fuel and air down and through. Okay, and we need to go back to this. So we're going to go ahead and check number 4 and see if it's disconnected or anything. Now that's bank 1. So okay, in bank 1, yeah, it's throwing lean, so it's going positive because it's just shooting air down. Now again, like I said, it's you have one problem on a flex fuel vehicle especially that's affecting one bank. But guess what? That affects your flex fuel inferred status. So anytime you have a drivability concern with the flex fuel vehicle, even though most people don't use flex fuel, these regular gas and 10% ethanol, you want to check it to see if it's off, because this, it's going to affect the fuel tables for both banks, the whole engine. Okay, so let's go out there and see what's going on in number 4, and we'll just concentrate on cylinder 4. As you see here, that deep V, we're losing 40-some% power, 40 RPM, compared to our cylinder. It's huge. So it's a dead miss, constant dead miss at idle. Let's go check it out. Okay, so a good visual over the engine compartment on a concern like this where everything was taken apart is a good idea, just to make sure everything's back together on here once again, and nothing is taken apart and or disconnected. Now cylinder 4 is all the way in the back on the passenger side here, so we're going to pull some stuff out of the way and get back down in there. Now the way V8 engines go on Fords is from the right hand bank, which is the passenger side, or a rear bank if it's transversely mounted, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it starts again on this side, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's very simple on Fords especially. And the same thing on V10s. They go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The only exception to that, and that's the same thing for V6, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Only exception to that is the Villagers, which are basically, I think, Nissans, and international engines, the 6.0, 7.3, stuff like that, that have their firing order, their cylinder order. So let's get back in there. Now there is a little trick you can use if you don't have a fancy scan tool like this to find a cylinder that's just a dead misfire even at idle, especially at idle. You want to go ahead, start the vehicle up. Okay. And you're going to make sure it has a rough idle. It's a dead miss. Obvious, right? What you want to do, once it comes down to idle, if you can get in here, I'll show you better on this side. You want to get in here and just disconnect one of these ignition coils. If it gets worse, then you know it's not that cylinder. Comes back, good to go. This one would have got back to number 4, disconnected it, and would have had no difference to it. The engine would still be shaking just the same, no change. We know it's that cylinder. Whereas if you disconnect other ones and it gets worse, you know it's not that cylinder, it's misfiring. So it can help you isolate a dead miss at idle. Let's do a relative compression test real quick, just for engine noise here. Okay, so we're going to do a relative compression test. Just to make sure nothing got down in the cylinder and bent the valve. So we're good to go, all cylinders, 0 all the way across. It even sounded good. You can just use your ears if you don't have a scan tool, and you'll be able to tell. While we're in here, and I have you here, before we get in too deep back there in cylinder 4 behind the PCM and everything, because we have this option, let's do a fuel system test. 08s were not known for injector sticking. 05 was the worst year. But let's go ahead and just do a leak down test and an injector flow test. Since it's so easy, this is one of those quick checks you do, just like the relative compression. It makes it real fast to isolate it. So right here, everything looks good already, with our drop down being good, half a PSI or so. But let's do a flow itself, see how well these are flowing compared to each other. Come on. It's gonna purge it. Now, this is a pretty cool little test. That's part of the IDS software. Let me talk about it once it comes up here. Here we go. So I think this is firing order on here. it'll test the injectors in firing order. Now the key is on, engine's off. It'll pressurize the fuel system, and then it will open the injector. And it opens the injector for the amount of time it takes to drop a certain amount of PSI when it injects into the cylinder. And it's measured right there, 78 milliseconds, 77. I didn't get an overall idea of how each one of these are responding, how much flow they have, and how blocked up they are. It gives you a real general idea without ever pulling them off the engine. So look at this. This is like perfect, like I was saying. We'll see what it says when it gets to number 4. It's one of those quick tests you can do before getting too invasive. I'm really thinking it's something he did with the plug or the coil. Looks like they're new Ford coils, so it should be okay. Yeah, see, number 4 is okay compared to the rest. And at the end, I'll give you a little graphical representation of how even they are to each other. It's a pretty cool little test. There we go. So everything's golden, everything's green. So at this point, we're going to go ahead, clear out the fuel injected in the cylinder with the startup real quick, and then we'll get over there and pull that coil out and see why number 4 is just dropping out like that. And we'll go from there, see what we find. Alright, so the coil itself is a Ford unit. Nice new coil on here, okay? It's got some dielectric grease on there, no big deal. It was plugged in properly, so was the injector. So let's take a look down into the cylinder and see what's going on here. Let's see if we can get a better view. Okay, so it looks like there's a lot of debris down in there. And that could cause the plug to not be contacting. I had one where there's a bunch of debris like you see right up here, all this crud around it. It lifted the coil too high, and it caused misfires in that cylinder that were not there before. There's lots down in there, so we should probably clear that out and then go from there. Alright, let's see how bad it is. That was cylinder 3. Let's see how cylinder 4 is. Oh god, here comes the sirens. Incoming, incoming. Anyways, this is what I found. I know it's ultra bright here. There we go. This is what I found down in there. You saw how bad it was up top here, but look at all this right here in the threads. So this was anti-seized, and then it was screwed down in there with all this grit and mud and dirt and everything else. So I don't think it's seated all the way. Matter of fact, look at the seat on there. Let's get you focusing here, buddy. Look at the seat right here, where it actually seats to the cylinder head. It's untouched. Look on this side. See it? Yeah, so it wasn't in there all the way. It's crossed there, maybe even. That's bad. I mean, it came out okay. So we're going to do some major cleanup. Wow. So the rest of the plug looks okay, but if it's not down in there far enough in the actual combustion chamber to light that air-fuel mixture, not going to do it. So we're going to clean this off, clean the cylinder out, and go from there. Alright, so I have it out of there and cleaned up so I can seat it. Looks pretty grimy in there, like it just wasn't seated before. In the area around it here, the valve cover and where the boot sits is cleaned up too, so I can sit in there all the way. So let's reinstall it and go from there. Alright, everything's back into place temporarily, and we can see if the cylinder misfire is gone. Now, he did mention that he bent one of the terminals on a fuel injector when he was putting back in, but again, we just did an injector flow test and it was fine, so we're going to concentrate on secondary ignition since compression checks out. Feels good, we'll see. Just got to clear that cylinder out from the brake clean and stuff I sprayed in there. It's definitely doing much better. Not so much. Make sure it's cleared out. Alright, let's go back over to the engine at this point. Now, believe it or not, I've seen these new coils from Ford have problems straight out of the box with a misfire like that. They're just dead coils. So what we're going to do now, since 3 and 4 are loose, they're not bolted in, you simply swap coils, and that's the easiest way to find out if the coil itself is the issue or malfunctioning, is do a cop swap from cylinder to cylinder, from a known good to your cylinder you're working on. So we're going to do that back in here. Okay, now with the coil on plug, coils swapped from 3 to 4 and 4 to 3, we can go ahead and repeat the test and see if the misfire follows. Looks like it's stuck on number 4. Alright. See? Told you. Bees are attacking me, guys. They're all over the place. So, at this point, with the coil swap not doing anything, putting the plug back in there correctly, compression being good, fuel injectors being good, what we're going to do now is a Noid light test. And you may be asking, why didn't you do that yet? Well, I only brought a little bit of tools with me. Figured I did not have it. Lo and behold, I bring this sucker with. And this thing, I'll go through it one day. This thing will get you out of a jam. It has everything in here. Fuses, little caps, little pieces, fittings. It's got another side to it. I'll go through it one day. Little pins to test stuff. But I also keep my Noid light in here that fits in the injectors and the coils. Just plug it right into there. I just saved myself. You could also use a test light. I did bring that with. It's a little more messy, but again, here. You never know when you're going to need a razor blade for the harnesses, pin for tensioners, brackets, little plugs. Look at this thing. It's awesome. I keep all kinds of stuff in here. It saves my butt. So let's go do a Noid light test on the injectors and coil. Now, we're not going to do a Noid light test on the injectors just yet because we just did another injector flow and it's working. It's working just fine, power and ground. So we're going to plug into the coil here. Let me get you in here. You can see how this one just literally pushes right in. And you want to do this key on engine off so the PCM does not disable the circuit. And we're going to sit here and we're going to watch it flash as the PCM pulses the ground side. And that'll verify our power coming in, and then of course our good pulse from the PCM. Let's make sure it's all the way in. Cylinder's misfiring already anyways. It's best to disconnect the injector on that bank so we're not injecting fuel, and we're going to watch it. Alright, we're getting it. It's really weak. Really weak. So we're going to compare it to another one here. Alright, check this out. Right here is cylinder 4 injector. And what I noticed is that when I push down on the electrical connector while the engine's running and misfiring, it'll start making this weird noise. And that indicates to me there's some kind of crack in the manifold or the injector or whatever. So I start moving around, paying closer attention. You see how it moves down in there? There should be a nice plush O-ring down in there that is keeping it in place and of course sealing up from any kind of vacuum leak on there. So I don't know what is going on here. Did he take it out and lose the O-ring on there or what? I don't know what's going on. But this thing is loose in here. So that's going to create a vacuum leak on that one cylinder. And then the air-fuel ratio is going to be way off. See that? They shouldn't move like that. Should be a nice tight seal down in there. So I'm going to have to go ahead and pull this out and see what's going on and possibly replace the injector. So we're going to have the fuel ratio off just on the one cylinder like that. And the PCM only corrects per bank. So it's not going to recognize this individually. So we're going to have to pull it off once the engine cools. Alright, try to listen to this little noise it's making, this little hoot noise it's making when I press down on it. I'll pull up on it and get a hiss noise from the vacuum leak. And there you have it. There's an injector that was not installed properly. Now, the whole reason the injector was pulled out of there before I ever got there was because the customer was doing VCT solenoids, coils, and plugs. And when they unplugged the injector to do all that, and then went to go plug it back in, they bent the pin on the injector somehow. So for some reason, he pulled the injector out of the fuel rail, the whole fuel rail up and all that, to go in there and straighten that pin out. And when he reinstalled it, he didn't use grease, and he might have cut the O-ring on there, and that caused the vacuum leak and the possible electrical issue when you push down the electrical connector on there. Also made that weird noise, and then when you cocked it the other way, it's just sucking air right down into that one individual cylinder. And remember, the PCM is only correcting per bank. So you have this bank and that bank, you know, bank 1, bank 2, and that's all it corrects for. Not only that, because this one was flex fuel, it was inferring the lean condition as the fact that the customer filled up with E85, which requires the engine to run very rich to make up for the lower BTU thermal output of E85. So they run extra rich. So because of that, this was flex fuel, it was affecting both banks from that one cylinder that was also messing up this bank. It was just a cluster. And that's why I say, if you have a dead misfire, you want to go in there, you want to go after that dead misfire, fix the dead misfire, ignore everything else, all the other PID data, the live network data, because you want that misfire corrected, so when the fuel and the air is coming into the cylinder, it's getting burned and used up just like it should, a full complete combustion on there as much as it can do. And then it sends it down and out, and the O2 and sensors infer it from there. Right now, it's getting bad information because it's just throwing fuel and air down that's not burned. So everything gets messed up, especially in flex fuel vehicles. So you take care of the cylinders misfiring, you clear the memory, and then you start fresh, check on your O2 sensors and your fuel trims and all that kind of stuff. So this was a weird one, but it's one of those ones you may run into, especially with flex fuel vehicles. It's a very, very good example of how skewed that flex fuel inferred PID can get when you have a simple misfire. It'll mess up both banks and the whole engine. I'll see you next time, guys.